Most of you are probably familiar with Kirby to some extent or another because he's kind of taken off as a bit of a merchandising franchise. He even has his own cafe. What you may not know is that this wasn't intended to be anything, really. way back in the day. Grouped together, there's a company, it's actually still around, called HAL Laboratories. If you're within this circle, you might know them more for Earthbound than anything else, but back in the day, they had just hired some new kid, pretty much fresh out of school. He's like, here, come here, make this game. And it was literally his first job, was as a director, as well as a bit of a programmer. No, I do not actually believe it was involved. If I clear the guesses, then I clear the name, too. So, it's possible there's a glitch. I mean, stuff be weird, yo. Either way, I still don't have anything for you there. If you want to tell me, let me know. So, Sakurai is, of course, the guy I'm talking about. Pretty much the guy who, well, I don't want to say invented Kirby, but he is probably the single most responsible person for Kirby becoming a thing. There's actually one other person who shares a huge amount of influence on that, which I'll get to in just a second. And thank you, by the way. So, Sakurai was the director and the programmer, along with several of the people at HAL Laboratory, who would eventually disperse into the gaming industry as a whole, just like Sakurai himself. Everyone knows the basic story about Kirby, the fact that he was actually a placeholder character. In fact, he was originally called Popopo, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same, which is funny because DDD is still in the game, and that's why it's DDD and Popopo. Anyways, he was always pink, by the way. We have concept art to prove this, even though there was some misinformation about that, and there was some confusion about whether or not this would cause any problems for the players, because they were playing on a Game Boy. So if you ever wonder why the artwork of the Game Boy game has Kirby as white, like a kind of a pale white, it's because it was a Game Boy game. But here's a fun one. Here's something you might not know about this game. So HAL Laboratories had no problem self-publishing, and were going to publish their own game, but they didn't get a lot of advance orders. Real quick, if you don't know what advance orders are, this isn't really a thing anymore, but back in the day, you'd say, hey, you'd reach out to the retailers, and you'd say, we're going to go ahead, and we've got this game. Here's the pitch, here's the thing, here's a bit of a playthrough, blah, blah, blah. And the retailers would say, cool, we'll advance order X copies. It helped to inform exactly how many they needed to print when it came to making the physical cartridges, and it would kind of help to give an idea of how well the game was expected to sell, right? And then they would give it to the retailers, then retailers would give it to us. Cool. In this case, this is also why pre-orders became such a thing back in the day, back when pre-orders actually had a valid point and purpose. Obviously, that hasn't been true in decades at this point. So, they only got 20,000 advance orders, which isn't bad, really, but was really discouraging. They almost actually axed the entire thing and just said that's not even worth printing at that point. Until several people from Nintendo, most notably Miyamoto, stepped in and was like, hold up. I've heard about this game you're playing. Do you mind if I play a copy of it? And Sakurai's like, sure. So Miyamoto sat down and played Kirby for reportedly about an hour. And then was like, okay. And I'm going to pull this out, quote for quote here. It would be a waste to see such a good game sell only 20,000. So, Nintendo then offered to publish, and because Nintendo were actually good publishers back in the day, I actually don't know if this is true anymore, but back in the day they were really good publishers. We've actually seen a few other examples of this already. They marketed the crap out of this. You might remember that original marketing stint, because Nintendo threw weight into it. And there's a reason why Kirby took off so quickly and so hard, and that's one of the biggest reasons, is they were pushing it everywhere. But there's one other side little story, which we'll talk about in just a sec. But I have to mention some of the thing. It worked. This game, the Game Boy game, sold 1.5 million units. Which, as a reminder, is a lot. 7 digits for a Game Boy game in 1992 is really impressive. Now, you're probably thinking, well, hold up. What are the mitigating circumstances? So, like I said, it's 1992. This is what we call the sweet spot of a console's release area, because Any console that has legs hits this point. So it comes out, a bunch of people pick it up at launch, and there's your launch titles. And then after a while, it starts to dip off as less and less new people are buying it, and less people are interested in it, and there's probably some hot new thing coming up. But there's this sweet spot right in the middle, where a console's been out for a few years, and interest is at its peak. A lot of people have bought it and are still buying it, and new games coming out in that sweet spot tend to sell well. So 1992 was pretty much the sweet spot for the Game Boy. Everyone involved, including Sakurai, by the way, I should mention really quick, a lot of the behind-the-scenes information on the Kirby series comes from Sakurai himself, because he is unusually open about everything, about the behind-the-scenes aspect of working on this. In fact, a lot of the information about Kirby comes from interviews about Smash Brothers, because, you know, this was his baby, so he tended to just kind of drift into talking about Kirby while he was talking about Smash. Anyways, so... everyone agrees. Yeah, go watch his YouTube channel. There's some great insight into game development over there. So everyone agrees that hitting that sweet spot was part of the financial success. But some people, I want to include myself in this, think that part of the reason why is because Kirby was so immediately appealing. Now, I don't know if the game is good, because I haven't played this game. Or rather, I haven't played this game to completion. I never beat the Game Boy Kirby. The first one I played was the one on the NES. Remember, I didn't have a Game Boy. I believe I actually talked about this before. So, yeah, I didn't pick this up until then. There's also one other asterisk I want to throw at you here. This was, for all intents and purposes, the first real platformer on the Game Boy. This is a very intense platform. Hang on, let's switch off the intensity there. This is the first real platformer in the Game Boy, because obviously there was Super Mario Land, which sucks, and then there's it's rough. Okay, I don't know what you want from me. Mario Land is rough, and then there wasn't much else because most people weren't like that on board. So there were a few rough early platformers, but there wasn't anything that I would honestly consider a solid platformer until this one. And I know what you're thinking. Well, what about Mario Land 2? Mario Land 2 came out 6 months after this. Now, if you check the release titles, which I did, almost immediately after Mario Land 2 came out, we started getting a lot more actually good platformers on the Game Boy. But the point being, this was the gap of, oh god, we need to make stuff on the Game Boy as quickly as we can. And Kirby was pretty much the floodgate on that. It was Kirby or Super Mario Land 2, take your pick. Because, again, 6 months apart. Anyways, I want to mention one other little asterisk before we move on. They tapped Jun Ishikawa for this game. That name probably doesn't sound familiar to you, and that's fine. He's the Kirby composer. He's done other stuff, of course. He originally worked as a sound designer and engineer. He completely lucked into the role, as is so common for so many of these early stories, because he was just working on sound design when the guy who was working at HAL Laboratories on music quit. And so they're like, well, you're audio related. Go make music for the game we're working on. Okay. He did something, however, that was considered, yeah, Kirby music is peak. The music that's playing right now is his work. He did something that was considered quite unusual for the time. He wrote melodies that he thought would fit the hardware. Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, duh, but actually, no, that was pretty unusual at this point in history. Most composers just made music, usually inspired by whatever actual genre, real-life instrumental genres that they happen to like. And then they would just throw it on the NES or the Game Boy or whatever, and it would sound rough. The ones that were the exceptions were the ones who actually composed music for the NES, or in this case, for the Game Boy. So most of the original music in this very game were designed to be played on a Game Boy speaker. Yes, Omega Legion. By the way, to use another example of this, Nobuo Uematsu, excuse me. Anyways, this pretty much solidified him as the Kirby composer, something he would be the exclusive composer of up until after Dreamland 3, which was the late SNES one you just mentioned. After that, he started working with a team, and fun fact, he is still working as a Kirby composer. He did music for Forgotten Land, to put it in a bit of perspective. Also, The music that plays at the aforementioned Kirby cafes was composed by him. Now, I actually have more behind-the-scenes-y stuff to mention later, but it kind of has to wait, because it's more relevant for later games. So let's go ahead and jump into this game. Let's cut this extremely awesome Kirby music here, and let's go back to the classics. I don't normally praise a title screen, but this is a solid title screen. First of all, it's animated, which I know sounds like a duh, but actually most of these weren't. Like, pound for pound, most of the old school NES and Game Boy title screens were just a picture or some text, right? Here we have little stars going off, and we have all the little Kirbys kind of running by in the bottom doing their own little rotations and whatnot. Yeah, Kirby, this is solid. There's some pedigree. You're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned Iwata yet. That's actually because he didn't work on this game. The next game. Anyways, two things though. You can kind of tell that Kirby was a placeholder graphic. Anybody who knows anything about pixel design or graphics design could tell, yeah, no, that's a placeholder. The only thing that doesn't indicate is the fact that they added shading to him, which was probably added after the fact. Nevertheless, this is probably going to be a truly rare example of a a Game Boy game that gets a sprite work positive. So, anyways. This is also the game that started that particular thing, where they would have just a few seconds of animation to set the scene for new stages. Call me a weirdo. I love that. I love the little skits. I don't even care. I don't even care. Don't at me. Yeah, so, hang on. There's actually several things to talk about very quickly here. Give me 1 second. So, a lot is conveyed very, very quickly and efficiently here. So, Taquetta already mentioned the big thing. There's no timer. Now, that wasn't unheard of. This is 1992, after all. But it was still uncommon enough that it was the kind of thing that would catch your attention. I mean, timers in games continued until, like, honestly, the aughts, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double-check my figures on that. Mario being the most obvious example, but a lot of games would do what Mario did because Mario did it without any thought or reasoning to it. Kirby games, yeah, especially this type of platform. Kirby games, no timer. Take your time, however much time you want to spend on it. There's also a score, lives counter, and a health bar. So very, very minimal HUD. I'm apparently not tabbed. There we go. Hey. Okay. By the way, there's a special animation for him bumping into something where he squishes for just a second. Boop. Boop. These little touches are completely unnecessary, but absolutely add to the flavor of the work. And I want to stress, this is still all the way back in the original. Like, this is the original. But some of you in chat already know this. I was shocked to learn this, because again, I haven't really played this game. Yeah, so there's actually a term you may have heard of. It's called early installment weirdness. It refers to when a specific game, its early titles don't fit the later titles, right? It's actually really common in game design, because most of the time they hadn't really thought about most of those ideas yet. So yeah, there's no copy abilities. The thing that Kirby is known for. So Sorry, I should be talking about stage design here. So let's talk about that. Hang on. Sorry. So let's talk stage design. I'm going too fast. Oh, it's so easy to go too fast with some of these games. Hang on. Let's rewind a bit. Let's rewind. You could do this, by the way. Okay, so when we actually started here, obviously there were no enemies. So let's just pretend these aren't here. There we go. So, once again, what's the first thing we see? Completely safe screen. Nothing here of any danger whatsoever. It's just a place to get used to the controls and which buttons do what. Figure out how that works. Figure out that works. It's all right here. It's a tutorial screen. Okay, cool. Then we encounter one enemy immediately in front of another enemy. Okay. So, that's pretty much the basic mechanic of fighting in this game. There's an enemy in front of a moving enemy. Then there's an enemy in front of a floating enemy. Very small but critical escalation to this is how you're supposed to fight enemies in this game. Inhale one, shoot against the other one. By the way, the brickwork is interesting. I hesitate to call it good, but for the Game Boy, it's excellent. It's just busy enough to not be boring. Try to remember what you got the brick, right? So you got this little screen, and you're playing it like this, and you're probably outside because you don't have a backlight. And they wanted there to be enough to look at so you could tell that there's something going on there other than just what most games did. Yes, I have Cyberpunk, which was just empty blank canvases of nothing. Also keep in mind that all the background stuff, and you can see, because this is what the original Game Boy looked like, is all kind of faded out a little bit. Like, look at Kirby himself right next to the cloud that's right above him. Do you see that? Kirby's outline is really nice and distinct. So is the ground, by the way. So are enemies. But the background stuff doesn't have the black outline. A little bit less Paranoid Android, but yes. Fun fact, this game was actually programmed on a Famicom. With a mouse ball. Because they didn't have a keyboard. Anyways, so we've had a really quick immediate escalation of here's the controls, here's the enemies, and there's just this giant wall. You cannot jump over this wall. You cannot progress until you figure out how to do this. This, I don't want to overpraise. This is basically Mario 1 again. But this is still forcing the player to adapt to what the game is about and figure out how to do it. Including things like that. An enemy which specifically has a part you could pull off and then shoot back at it. And then there's a big thing which has a nice, obvious in sign. And if you go in, you see 2 health ups. On the off chance... No, Omega Legion. On the off chance that you've taken damage up till now as you're learning to play the game, here's the in thing. Again, this all seems fairly basic, but try to remember that this game was kind of being designed around the idea that this was being played by like 5-year-olds, right? People who probably have not played a video game before, which, once again, is the exact same thing Mario 1 did. So, first bottomless pit. Notice you can actually recover from those using the technique earlier. Start to see a little bit more variety and a little bit more density to the enemies. And that's the tutorial. Now we have our first mini-boss. Notice he does actually have a health bar down there. You can, of course, also play pacifist if you're weird. Why would you not want to kill things? God, that's so strange. Not a huge amount of variety in the enemies, but there is some. And they keep kind of varying up which enemies can be detached from other enemies as part of the whole inhale and then shoot mechanic. I mean, yeah, for a series that is as dark as this one is, most of the enemies here aren't evil. And of course, that is a tutorial for the fact that you can inhale power-ups, or in this case, health-ups, I should say. It's always amusing to me to see which enemies stick around how long. You're probably expecting me to talk about the lore of this franchise. I'm pretty sure the lore didn't actually start till the next game. We'll see. So, first boss. I mean, this, honestly, this is just Kirby being like, DDD, quit it. Stop it. Stop being so weird. And then they do this. Aww. So, oh shoot. I was just putting the controller down. Yeah, pause. So, there we go. Yeah, we sneezed and knocked the stars out of the sky. But yes, this is, King DDD stole the food. Give it back. And he has regretted it ever since. How would I do the boss pacifist? I don't think you can. There are challenge runs where you don't use copy abilities. There's challenge runs where you don't use the A button. And then there's challenge runs where you don't kill where you kill as little as possible, but I think you still have to kill bosses. It's kind of the Metal Gear Solid thing. Anyways. Sorry, there is so much density, I'm going to have to pause periodically to type. I apologize. This is not a long game. Oh yeah, no, Kirby absolutely destroys some things in this setting. The only lore you really need to be aware of right up front is that Kirby is what I like to call a positivity elemental. So elementals are like things composed of an element, right? It's a giant bundle of sentient fire or sentient earth, whatever. So Kirby is sentient positivity. That's it. That's the main thing you need to take away from all this. It also explains a lot of why he fights some of the things that he fights. Lol. Okay. Right, and I also wanted to talk about that victory jingle. So there's actually a professional term for that. I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to call it what I've always called it, which is you did a good. We've actually talked about this before. Oh, excuse me. Because there's several video games fail at you did a good. It's a form of feedback, right? Audio and visual feedback to let the player know that something happened. Because there's also you did a bad, right? It's a way to convey to the player that what you're doing is correct or what you're doing is not correct, right? So the fact that they bothered to add the jingle plus the little animation tidbit at the end was a way to try and convey, Congratulations, you did it. I know that sounds obvious, but think about how few games do something like that. Like, the Mega Man X games do that, to put that into a bit of perspective. Some of the classic Mega Man's games do that. A few of the Mario games do that. And a couple of Zelda games. I'm running out. I'm trying to think of anything like less mainstream than that. It's like, you did it good. Doo-doo-doo-doo. There's also a sound effect, which we'll probably hear at some point, where if you get particularly low on health, there will actually be another sound effect playing just to indicate, hey, in case you haven't noticed your health bar, it's low. And no, I don't mean a What I mean by that is there'll be just this dee once to indicate that you have reached low health. Also, I'm sorry, the music is surprisingly good, even for a frickin' Game Boy. Oh, hey, what's this? Okay. That's kind of horrifying, but okay. In what, Tigzar? Ah! No! 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 Actually, yeah. Which is funny, because that can also be done really badly. See KOTOR for an example of how to do that very badly. Speaking of feedback, we are shooting out stars, we are glowing, and the music changes. Again, this is pretty much the same thing that Mario 1 did, but it's still good. Get out of here, Lolo. Oh yeah, you're probably wondering, who the hell are these guys? So, I actually played Adventures of Lolo before I played Kirby. So I was like, oh my god! Nowadays, I think it's kind of the opposite. They play this and they're like, who the heck is that guy? It was a, what do you call it? Puzzle game. It was a very brutal and kind of horrific puzzle game is what we're going to call that. Which I never beat, but I did play the hell out of back as a kid. Oh, and in case you're wondering why it's here... Really, Dakota? Wow. So yeah, Lola was actually reasonably well known for the time. But the more important part was it was done by HAL Laboratories. So, of course it's here. So this is an interesting example of a teleport maze. I usually am pretty against teleport mazes, but the thing that makes this one work a little bit for me, the one that we just went through, I can't even go back to, is that almost all of the individual the doors that you can see are the doors you can walk into. Hey, there's our death animation. So there's our checkpointing, by the way. It's screen transition. Yeah, it's not counterintuitive, exactly. Ha! We hit them from behind. It all makes sense. Come here, come here. No? Okay. Wait, which one's Lolo and which one's La La La? Which one do I shoot? Aw. Of course they have tails. I don't remember why off the top of my head. Yep, whoopsie, try again instead of you suck and should die. Oh, the other thing that Mr. Oh, I forgot how to pronounce his name. The guy who's doing the music was really big on was using the stereo a lot. Like more than you otherwise would imagine from a Game Boy game. He got a little bit of flack for that, but I actually think he made the right choice on it. If nothing else, it got him the experience to do it properly when he started playing games that would be played on a stereo. Which he did a lot of. I shouldn't even say past tense. He is still working on the Kirby series. Hey, little one, give me 1 second, please. Thank you for the sub. We did it good. Aww. He just wanted to have some fish. Live Alive R, FFTR, and Fire Emblem Echoes. Done. Happy New Year. Happy New Year's, Paranoid Android. I mean, there is precedence for such a thing as a positive to cute. That is not a joke. I'm not sure if this one deserves it, but I was gonna bring up the music. This is shockingly good for a frickin' Game Boy. Do you know how many Game Boy games have legitimately good music? There are a few. It's like 3. Maybe 5. Yeah, like, there's the solid ones, right? So, like, Final Fantasy Adventure, Mario Land 2, Wario Land 1. Oh, no, sorry, Wario Land 2. Excuse me. I would argue Gen 2 for Pokemon, not Gen 1. As we demonstrated recently. Oh, by the way, you're probably thinking, hang on a second. Kirby's original name was Popopo, right? Which goes along with DDD and Lo. I don't know why HAL Laboratory had this thing with the triple repeating vowel, but that... Probably Pillars of Stone. Booyah! And yes. And yes, to your earlier question. Kirby is not supposed to be ludicrously difficult or challenging. It's supposed to be fun. Very recently, Sakurai was doing one of his announcement videos, like one of those 45-minute directs about Kirby's Air Ride. And he said a sentence which really stuck with me. So this was just like a couple months ago. It was something along the lines of, I wanted to make sure that whoever was playing the game, they could still have fun with it. And that probably describes a lot of his overall design philosophy in a nutshell. A lot of people think that fun can only come from either complexity or from difficulty, and that's demonstrably untrue. I mean, You can try, Mr. It. Okay. Oh, yeah, so... This is also another example of a game I will not be dinging for its save system. I'm just waiting for anybody to pick up and be like, wait, what? By the way, first time we have enemies that actually have weapons on stage 3 here. So projectiles have been added to the mix. So yeah, there is no save system at all. There's no passwords, there's no nothing. Yeah, we're on stage 3 of 5. Yeah. As I've already pointed out, the checkpointing is actually pretty solid. It is per screen. But, whoop. There we go. Also, there were some hardware issues, just to put it simply. It is pretty much the same negative I didn't give Pokemon Red, and for the exact same reason. It's probably the first time they've actually challenged us with a Room of Death. By the way, spikes don't instant kill. I think. I should actually verify that. Yep, nope, we're good. Hurt, but they do not kill. But, immediately after they do that section, which is probably one of the hardest sections of the game, they give you a full heal. Just right there. Bam. Here you go. Good job. You made it through it. Let's rock. Pretty much, Mad Overlord. I have said for years, and will continue to say for years, that, you know, we review games now, not with consideration for the times. The big asterisk on that is, I'm not going to dig a game for something that didn't exist or wasn't possible at the time. The analogy I like to use is I'm not going to give a game a negative for bad voice acting when the voice acting was on, you know, the SNES or whatever, right? Uh-oh. Ah! What's really funny is this game took a while to program. It makes sense in a hindsight, though. And if you don't understand why, this sequence right here is a perfect encapsulation of the original Kirby game. This game is far more complex than it looks, and has far more depth to it in terms of its systems and its physics and its level design. This is a game that they didn't just throw together in an afternoon, or even a month. This game took years, because they just kept working on it, and kept working on it, and kept working on it. Help! 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 Oh god, there's so many Kirbys! Yeah, Kirby 1. Simple, but solid. I'm starting to wonder if I actually have beaten this game, because a lot of this looks familiar. I've probably just seen speedruns of it. Because I swear I haven't beaten this game. And yes, Mad Overlord. They would continue that later as well. So it's going towards Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow. Tear down. Interrogation. And a thank you. Thank you, Chill Pangolin. No, I haven't played the GBA version of this. Hang on. 1 second. Yep. This was something that was actually semi-common in platformers back in the day. I've shown this off with both the Marios and the Mega Mans, where there would be little bits of visual continuity, right? You climb a high tower, and at the top of the tower are clouds, and then you start doing cloud stages, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just a way to give you a conveyance that you're actually going somewhere, rather than just doing completely disconnected stages. Frankly, later Mario games would completely fumble at the same concept by having entire stages that just have nothing to do with each other. Maybe a good fate. 1 second, please. I know, right, Chill Pangolin? I mean, at least Mario 64 had the paintings, so there's a bit of logic behind that. But then they kind of kept following Mario 64's thing, rather than Mario 3 or Mario World. Don't let Ross hear me praising Mario 3, though. Kid Icarus definitely had visual continuity. Absolutely. More than Metroid, actually. Oh, God. Yeah, no, considering the original fight, from what I understand, is actually kind of hard. That should be interesting. So, something I haven't really mentioned, though, I probably should, even back here in the original, there's a downside for having something in your mouth like this, you know, something primed and ready to go. You can't float. This doesn't really matter that much in this one. This will matter a lot more in later games. Oh yeah, by the way, this is our first introduction to these guys. You can't inhale these guys. They just get pissed if you try it. And then they explode. Notice we're still escalating, by the way. New themes and new enemy types. I don't know, I'm feeling that brickwork positive. Probably just one, in fairness, but what are y'all thinking? Give me some feedback. How off my rocker am I? Also, more projectile enemies. And now we've got spikes plus projectile enemies. Thank you, Riplinger. Also, notice we've started getting faster moving enemies, too. I'm honestly impressed. I really wasn't sure what I was expecting walking into this. But... anyways, right. I was talking about mechanics. So there's a bit of a decision-making thing. You can recover from a fall by just tapping up to float, right? But if you have something in your mouth... well, okay, pretend I had something in my mouth. You can't. There. Boom. So if I fall, I'm dead. So if you want to hold on to ammo, if you want to be primed to shoot immediately, you have to sacrifice that mobility. Again, they don't do much with that in this game, but that is going to be a recurring element in several future games. I am very stupid. There's Kraka 1. Instantly dead. Listen, Omega Legion, I definitely haven't been trying to eat the enemies the entire time. Ah! This is always my favorite Kirby boss. Can anyone guess why? Ah. So, hang on. Let me finish off Krakow here. And now we're in space. I don't know about you, but I've been in space, yo. Some health up over here. No. Ahem. So, jump button is obvious. So, jump. Jump doesn't actually do much other than jump. That's inhale, which is hold. But even if you tap, like I'm tapping right here, there's still like a second of inhaling. So it does also stall you for a second. So if I tap, grab. Now we're back to jumping. Tap again, shoot. This is up. Up does this. That's actually it. I actually think that was really clever, because as you say, they only really had 2 buttons to work with. That's an interesting question. I wonder what our current fastest review run is. So we're shooting fireballs from our mouth because we just had some curry. Yes, up inflates, and then starts going up once you are already pointed up. Pretty much becomes a mandatory. I mean, it was already mandatory as a mandatory in the first stage, but as you can see, it's the only way to navigate this stage. Aw. So, real Krakow fight now. The reason I liked Krakow was because I liked the name. That's it. That's my big, in-depth reason for liking Krakow. Notice almost every enemy in the game uses pretty much the exact same laser ability. Like, that attack right there is just the same thing that every other enemy has been doing, except doubled in both directions at the same time. You cannot... There is no copy power, Sovicom. That's why every boss shoots out something you can inhale. Although a lot of future games will do the same thing. Mount DDD. This is it. The final battle. No, seriously. I don't know why he's a penguin. Don't ask me. Alright, who should we do first? Yep, time to chop off the guessing game. You've got your guesses in, right? Yes, we will never see DDD ever again. This is the end of King DDD. Wait, so he's even better than an emperor? My God. Listen, I'm sure in Forgotten Land, DDD will be fine. He's everything's gonna be fine for Mr. DDD. Okay. So, what's hard run, Chillpangolin? Oh yeah, boss refight's negative. We finally found a negative to gameplay. Gosh darn it. Oh, no healing? I'm sure there's such a thing as a good boss rush. Surely, surely, surely. It's just not in any Capcom game. Well, the Four Fiends refight isn't a refight. Or a boss rush, actually, if you think about it. Nope. There's no healing on this train. Only death. We fight or we die. I don't think so, Tigzar. Oh god. Alright, you finished the raid, now fight the entire series of bosses all over again. Damn it. Yeah. Oh, that's even worse on Mega Legion. I wasn't thinking nearly that bad. You are truly evil, sir, and or madam. Yeah, see, the problem... Like, I could see the concept of too short or too long, but that feels like a game-specific issue. Not a universal issue, if that makes any sense. Whoops! God, I wasn't even paying attention. In other words, there's no such, like, magic number of a game being too long or too short. It just depends on what you're using with your time. What you're using your time for. Yeah. I wonder what a game over does in this game. Because we still have to fight DDD. Yeah, exactly, Moog. Like, objectively too short of a game is probably not a game at that point. And objectively too long a game is Desert Boss. I sort of thought that was a game over, which is why I let that happen. Um, God, I don't remember the frickin' input. I never remember the input. Hang on a second. There we go. Yeah, cost doesn't factor into reviews, and honestly, I don't know. I think that's a little bit too subjective. That is to say, down to personal opinion. Like, you say a game that's 20 minutes is too short, and I kind of vibe you on that. But what if it's a game you really like replaying frequently? I mean, I can beat Mega Man 2 in 20 minutes. And I have. Yeah, also, emphasizing cost just tends to lead towards padding. It's actually one of the biggest reasons why there has been padding for so many years, going back to the NES era. One of the biggest reasons why it was so easy to die in so many early NES games is because they wanted you to die repeatedly, so you'd keep playing it. Only briefly, I remember, because I wasn't a huge fan. Ooh, those only show up for a second, don't they? No! I don't know, Fusion Catalyst. And yeah, that's the arcade mentality. I'll eat you too, DDD. Except I can't. Frickin' penguin. What, make him Spanish or Mega Legion? For those of you not aware, the reason almost everyone voices Meta Knight with a Spanish accent is because of the anime. Seriously, I've never heard him voiced any other way because of that. Ah, shoot. I wasn't expecting that. Well, we both have 1 HP, DDD. Let's do it. Defeated. The end? Masa sacre. And yes, this was back when they were still using code names for credits. Finders Keepers takes her. Okay. There's Jun Ishikawa, one of the only people who didn't actually put a code name here. I'm sorry, R-O-L? Act? As I say, we're just dripping food everywhere. Take, my minions, take of the food. Oh, it was an I, not an I. Gotcha. Still don't know what you're talking about, though. So, press up, A, and select on the title screen to start a new adventure. I like how they actually show it right there on the brick. And DDD's like, I'll be back, because I'm pure evil. Anyways, return on investment. What's a return? I'm still not sure I 100% understand. Because I can see that question meaning a lot of different things. Help me out here. Pretend that I'm 5. Pretend that I'm a moron. Pretend if you just smacked me across the face, that I would explode. DDD is less villainous than Bowser. It's the simplest way I could put that. In fact, I hope you enjoyed the only time, I think, that he's ever actually been a villain. Yeah, unironically, Bowser, who, at least when he has a character, aka the RPGs, is extremely non-villainous, is still more villainous than DDD. Oh, shoot, hang on. Give me a second. Oh, God. I'm... What the... What? Okay, so... hang on. Can I just, like... There's a reset button? There's got to be a reset button, right? There it is. There we go. Sorry, I forgot to do the thing. Hang on. So it's up, select A. By the way, those animations are skippable. Oh God, they jump. They jump now? The extra mode. And now there's like cake that's shooting cake frosting? Stop shooting cake frosting. Stop shooting cake frosting. This is the very first Kirby game. This is what began it all. Jesus! Amusingly, this game does qualify as a first game. Most of the people who worked on this game, this was their first entry. The only exceptions were the people who worked on The Adventures of Lololo, which I already mentioned. No! But you're right, it sure as hell doesn't feel like a first game. Then again, Expedition 33... Well, no, Expedition 33 did feel like the first game, never mind. I'm trying to think of a game that was a first game that didn't feel like it. Lots of people use Mario RPG and Kirby music in YouTube videos, I've noticed. Like, a weirdly large percentage of people. Well, not yet, obviously, I'm mindless. Hollow Knight. You know what? Yeah, I'll actually agree with that. See, a lot of indie games don't fully qualify for the first game tag. Mostly because, you know, they're the only game. Like, it feels disingenuous to refer to a first entry and only entry as a first game. Because the whole point of a first game is it's your first time trying something that you then got better at. Yeah, for example, Celeste's true first game would be that 2-bit demo, which you can actually play in the final version of Celeste. That's a first game. Well, then it sucks to be you, Ben One Eye. But it still doesn't qualify, because there is no second game. Yeah, Breath qualifies, because Tears exists. So I lied, by the way. Remember how I mentioned the strategy of not inhaling and holding a thing to prevent you from platforming didn't come up in this game? I've had to do that several times just in this fight. This is actually pretty mean. So what happens when you game over? I was hoping to at least get to stage 2 before I game over, but... So, okay. Unfortunately, that isn't as informative as I was hoping. Hang on a sec. I gotta actually try now. Well, Undertale also is not a first game. The Earthbound Halloween hack would be the first game there. Which feels a lot more like a first game. See, that's what I was trying to figure out a little bit. Unfortunately, I realized a little bit too late I should probably actually try and actually defeat the boss. Mutually assured. Oh, it counted! Holy crap, it counted! But yes, everything does double damage, and there's a lot more enemies and a lot meaner enemies. Hang on. Why don't we just give up on this for the second? Just for the sake of completion. I know, you're all impatient for the game to be over, but just bear with me for a sec. Right. Hello, Zara. Neither, Omega Legion. Although I don't know how they review, because I obviously haven't reviewed very much. Hopefully, we'll be fixing at least some of that over the next few days here. As a reminder, we're only doing the first Kirby block this bundle. So we're going up to Dreamland 3? Or no, we're going into Star Ultra, which is technically a DS game, but I didn't want to play this NES game and then the DS game separately because I didn't think it's worth the time. So we're just playing the DS version. Yeah, I noticed we don't get the big shot. I wanted to be a big shot, but I couldn't get that crawler. The same reason we played FF1 on the NES, and Dragon Quest 1 on the NES. And Metroid on the NES. So, that's valid, Omega Legion, except it's completely invalid. So here's the thing. There's not enough difference between Superstar Ultra and Superstar to warrant playing both games. So we're not going to play both games. Which... That's strange. Which means we're only going to play one of them, which means we're going to play the one with all the features. Make sense? By contrast, to use FF1 as the example, FF1 on the NES and FF1 on the Pixel Remaster are completely different games, and therefore warrants a completely separate playthrough. I swear I put thought into things. I know it doesn't look like it, because again, moron. You know, I've never played Amazing Mirror. Not on purpose, I just never got around to it. No, I'm definitely not doing this on purpose, Mook. I'm just testing something. Yeah, I just asked ChatGPT to write my reviews for me. Even though I've been doing this since before ChatGPT existed. So that is exactly what I thought. You restart at the last stage, but otherwise you're reset. Okay. The enemies suffer touched idea. Actually, they do if you've been paying attention. If you take damage while you're in your iframes and you bump into another enemy, the enemy dies. Ugh, excuse me. Yeah, no kidding, Omega Legion. Well, Superstar. Go away. Speaking of Superstar, let me finish jotting down some thoughts really quick here. I guess I could pause. I guess. Hang on. There. So, I don't know if you've ever read any of the Forgotten Realms stuff, Andity, but there's a dwarf in there who has rather spiky armor. And his primary battle strategy is to run up to people and hug them. It is, distressingly effective. I think you're right, Lindeval. Wait, what's happening? I actually can't see the screen. I don't see anything happening. You're lying to me, Omega Legion. Why did you do this? Oh god, it would be horrible a little bit. Like, they'd be like, Uncle, Uncle, and then be like, ah, and then I'd be dead. Hungry Night. Well, I have actually never heard of that before, so I'll jot this down. I'll look into it later. And thank you, Ect, as always. Also, I miswrote that as Silk Slong. I'm not sure what that is, but... See, that sounds like a bad thing. Because, you know, you kind of want that to be hard, not soft, right? So that sounds like an insult. Is everyone done guessing, by the way? Actually, it probably does, Andity. Which is the funny part. Look, there's modding, and then there's whatever they do. No judgment. That's on you. You go do you. Alright, was this the shortest game we've ever covered? I can figure that out immediately. Let's see here. No. There's one game we've covered which was shorter. Which was that Game Jam game that Evo made. This is even shorter than Helltaker. Yes, all of WoW. Is shorter than this. Okay. Let me scooch down the audit here really quick. There are 43 or 47, I forget which, formulas for the golden number Riplinger. So yes is the answer to your question. And no, I'm not sharing it, and indeed never have. Oh, speaking of Meta Knight. Lots of people have asked for it over the years. That's just sort of the automatic follow-through thing there. Part of the reason it's so complicated is it has to... So for those of you who understand math, it has to accommodate... Kinda, yeah, Omega Legion. It has to accommodate positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, negative, and negative, positive. And each of those requires different rules mathematically. Like, you can't just apply the same formula to all four situations, right? So that's part of the reason it goes through so many formulas to get it into something usable. That's a good question. Pong would probably qualify as the shortest possible game we could cover. Because I could review Pong inside of about a minute, I would say. Like, even something like Tetris has a little bit more depth than that. And E.T. on the Atari, which is probably one of the only Atari games I know anything about. Even that's like 15 minutes. Is Pong on the list? Sure, here's Pong. No pluses to brickwork, or sprite work, or visuals, or controls, or core mechanics, or anything. Golden number of Pong, 0. Done. I cannot imagine Excitebike will be shorter than a minute. Unless you mean shorter than this game, in which case, maybe. There's a few NES games in the NES block that will be extremely short. In the ancient times, before violence crept its way into man's heart, people solved their problems and differences with one another, using the ancient art of Pong. I don't think anybody expected it to be that bad, things are. Yeah, Merry Christmas. There's your review of Pong. Oh, God. Tetris Effect. It's okay. Elder Scrolls 6, which I think they finally started working on this year, will totally not suck. No, they're working on the new Fallout game. They've even talked about it. You know what they've told us about the new Fallout game? This is not a joke. It's going to be ludicrously long. I believe 600 hours was the quote. Which, yeah. I hate all of you. I want you to know that. Yeah, exactly, Dakota. It's just... I don't know, Pillars, just no. I'm really the wrong person to ask about that. Okay. Let's see if we can come up with any gameplay negatives. We can do this. So we haven't actually done one of those in a little over a year now, Riplinger. But they happened, when we did them, they happened in the normal time frame. So, like, I just stream, and, you know, we talk about an episode, then I cut off, then I talk about the next episode, then I cut off, then I talk about the next episode, and cut off, and we just squeeze as many as we could into the day. I don't know, that forces me to think about that game again, Pillars of Snow. And I do believe that's a criminal offense. Actually, I do, like it all. FF6 is a 60-hour game. Part of the problem is if you think about it. Correct, Riplinger. Like I said, we haven't done that in a little over a year at this point. By about a year and 3 months, I want to say. Hang on, Pillars of Snow. Let me finish the audit. You're forcing me to think about a game I'm trying very hard to forget. Give me a minute. No, it's okay. It's just like I'm in the middle of the audit, and you're like, "Wait, here's an in-depth question that I want a 17-hour essay on." And I'm like, "What? Hold up, 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 hold up." Clearly, I should just have the AI do the audit for me. Did I miss anything in this review? Sorry, but stuff. Just give me a sec. Give me a sec. I'm up to the eyes. I'm up to the eyes. I can't give this game any kit positives because there is no real kit, is there? That's gonna change in future Kirby games. That's gonna change a lot. I love the name of this game, by the way. Or, excuse me, the name of this song. Does anyone know the name of this song? The name of this song is What Kind of Name is DDD? Yeah, I'm not sure when they... I guess we'll find out, won't we? Because we'll be doing the NES version next. Oh, God, I hate that Savacom. I don't think I could swing a replayability for this one. It's short, and that does help replayability, I'm not gonna lie. But... no. It's everything. Your research is so good, you have no idea. Whatever it is you were already thinking, Savacom, is absolutely correct. Could someone type exclamation mark next really quick, please? Thank you. Whoop, 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 whoop. That's not right. That music isn't allowed here. There we go. Okay. This is 9 positives per hour. Just by virtue of being in a ridiculously... Games like this are why we added a cap on density. Oh, I don't even know how I'd do that, Blade Deval, off the top of my head. I mean, I do, actually. It would involve a few things and a few steps in the process. God. So that's... hang on a second. So this game would score about 660-ish under the old system. The old system. We got rid of that pretty early. Like, the moment we hit the Mega Man games, I was like, alright, hold up. That's not good. let's fix that. All of that's density. Okay. Also, can I just say, this was actually my favorite mode back in Superstar. Just to replay, just for fun. I don't really have a good reason why. It was just a lot of fun to me to go replay it. But yes, in a series, in a genre, 2D platformers, known for having really high density, this almost has the most positives per hour we've ever covered. There are 2 games that beat it, on both axes even. I'll just say right now, they are Mega Man 5 and Mega Man 11. Final golden number. So we've got +6 to story, which is 6 positives per hour, and a ratio of 100%. That's actually all pretty normal. 9 pluses to gameplay. That's actually pretty below average, but really solid. Like, I'm unironically impressed by how good this was. You know? I was expecting a nothing burger, and what I got was some surprisingly solid level design. Very dense, very well constructed. Like, I don't want to overpraise it, but that's way better than I was hoping for. Um, Pollo. That's 15 pluses per hour. Somehow. And a 90% ratio, giving us a final golden number of... Drumroll, please. 1. Each Pollo will be a positive 44.66, which means Philisandus wins. Congratulations, Philisandus. I've put that towards Command & Conquer 1R, FTL, FTL, and the Xenosagas. This is really good for a Game Boy game. In fact, I'm pretty sure, yes, this is the best scoring Game Boy game we've ever covered. In fact, I would say there's only 2 Game Boy games that might contest this, Mario Land 2 and Wario Land 2. This is solid. It is no wonder this game scored as well as it scored. Sold as well as it did. And it's no wonder they pretty much immediately wanted to make a port, which was the next thing they started working on immediately after this. But I feel like there's something else we could talk about before we talk about that port.